What's up, guys? Josh here, just checking in with you guys today. This is HomeLab Series Episode 3. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up a standard network file share, otherwise known as NFS. And we're going to be sharing that over our network to our personal computer right here. And the main reason why we're doing that is because, it's my preferred way of actually distributing files is over an NFS share compared to anything like Samba. Samba works great. It's just that it's not nearly as simple as NFS, right? I'm using an all Linux household here, so I don't need to worry about Windows. So I'm just going to share everything over NFS simply because I can. I'm going to explain why I'm covering the network file share first. And because when you're setting up a home server, the majority of home servers actually here in like a house, not a business or anything like that, they're not really running services. They're actually just distributing files. And the original server was really just a file server. It's very basic, and it's something that, BSDs and Linux servers have been doing for years. And it's probably the most interaction that I actually do with my own servers is, looking up a file, writing to a disk or backups or anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our desktop. Don't need to be watching the parrot now. We can get rid of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to access my server. If you remember, my server's IP address is 192.168.0.10. Type in my password. And you can see I just logged in earlier today from this IP address right here. That's actually my desktop, and I'll show you how to find that on the local system here in just a second. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to use our package manager, and we're going to install NFS utils. I should probably tell it that we're actually installing that. And that's going to be true across like Red Hat systems, CentOS, OpenSUSE. I think even Gento's package is called NFS utils, because that's going to provide all the utilities that we need for NFS. Of course, if you're using Gentoo and you're compiling your own kernel, you want to make sure that NFS is enabled in your kernel. But I'm not going to show you that because we're not compiling kernels. Now, on Ubuntu and Debian-based systems, it's going to be called something different. And I've got this right up here on my website that I actually published 3 or 4 years ago at this point, because I've done this video before. This is a new server, a new me, and a new age. This article is still relevant for this video because package names don't really change very often. But if you're using a Debian or Ubuntu based system, you've got two different packages. You have the NFS kernel server for the server and NFS common for your client. But of course, we're using Fedora, so we're just going to install NFS utils. Just like that. Now, of course, if you're using a package manager that doesn't use any scripts like, Void Linux or even Gentoo, you might need to make sure that the NFS client service is actually running. Well, it doesn't actually have to run, you just have to make sure that it's actually enabled, which you can see that DNF is a fantastic package manager, and it set it up for me, so we're good. Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to create in our Etsy folder, that's going to create a file called exports. And that's just going to be a standard text file. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do sudo vim. We're going to go into that. Now, of course, I want to show you guys my file structure here real quick. And I've got all my drives mounted in /serve, if you remember correctly. And specifically, the only two folders I'm going to share are just games and media. I'm not going to share everything. Why am I not sharing everything? Because, not everything needs to be broadcast over the network. In fact, there's actually some things I specifically don't want to be broadcast over the network, like, my backups or, like, container information. I don't necessarily need that to go directly to, like, everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in the path for our folder, so serve, and we'll just start with the media directory, just like this. And I want to share it with specifically my desktop computer, 192.168.0.100. Just like that. And to make sure that my IP address is the correct one, I'm going to go on my local system here, IP adder. And that's going to get the IP address for my system, 168.100. Now, you'll see a /24 or /48. That's basically just talking about like your subnetwork. I'm not necessarily a network guy, so I don't know what the /24 signifies. All I know is that all my systems are typically /24, so I'm not even going to worry about typing that in. And we're going to open up a set of parentheses, and these are going to be our file sharing options. And I want to make sure that everything is sharing with read-write access. And I'm going to call no subtree check. That will encourage is that when it's sharing the files across there, it's not going to check for like file permission settings concerning root. And I'm also going to pass sync. What that will let us do is that when a sync command is called by the kernel on our client, I want it to be able to pass it over the network to the server as well. And what that does is basically the same thing as what like the sync command in your Linux terminal does too. You probably ran it and get immediate access, but did you know that this command actually does something? Yeah, the sync command is actually pretty interesting. You're an old school network admin, and you were working with systems 20 years ago, and you're working with those old AT hard drives. You're probably familiar with having to call the sync command. Just saying. We'll go ahead and write and quit out of them with a :WQ, by the way. And now what we're going to do is we're going to export our file system. So export FS. And I'm going to pass it a variable of -A for everything, R for recursively. Otherwise, I'm just sharing the top level file. And we're going to do verbosely. Just like that. And you're going to see now it is exporting to here. And you'll see that it's exporting 192.0.100, which is my desktop computer's IP address, and it's sharing that folder. Fedora has this wonderful thing called a firewall that's going to be in our way because, you know, security by default. We're going to go down here, and we've got some firewall commands to pass. So, sudo firewall cmd -permanent -add service NFS. And then RPC bind. And then because I'm going to be mounting things, I want to pass mountd as well. We'll pass those three, and we'll reload our firewall, just like that. And at this point, technically, we're done. At least here. We passed our firewall commands, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to open up a terminal to our desktop client. Is just run sudo show mount, because I want to see all the mounts from an external resource, so -E 192.168.0.10. Unable to receive. Oh, okay. So yeah, the reason why I'm unable to receive is because I forgot to start the NFS server. Sure helps to, you know, sure helps to actually start your server, right? There we go. Okay. Now this should work. Yep. Okay, so there we go. Export list. For that server, it's sharing this directory with this computer here. And as you remember, that's my IP address. So now what I can do is I can run, well, first of all, let's actually just look in our mount directory here. You can see I've got two folders. So I've got games, which is an empty folder, and media, which is also an empty folder. It's important that you want to make sure that these folders are empty, because you cannot mount a directory to a directory that has something in it. That's not something you realistically want to do. We're going to call upon the magic that is the root user. So sudo, so superuser_do. And I want to run mount. And we're going to call a mount type of NFS. and we want to pass the directory on our server. So our server's IP address .0.10 colon. Actually, we don't really need this one now. And we're going to do serve media, because that's what we're sharing right now. And I want to mount it to MNT media. There we go. And you can see that now I've got all my media files mounted on my local computer. And you can see I even own it. So I should theoretically be able to just write a random folder to it. So MNT media and hi. Just like that. And you can see it's there. And that's what the no subtree check does. And you can see that those folders also match my UIDs as well. So everything is owned by Joshua on my server as well as my desktop computer. That's all that means. I'll have another video covering like file permissions and all that. So now there's a problem here, because if we do a mount, that's going to show us all the mounts on our system. You can see that we're mounting here, but this is not a persistent mount. And basically what that means is that we'll have to just do the sudo mount every single time we want to be able to access that. But I want to make this persistent because I'm lazy and I never want to have to call this command again. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a systemd mount unit itself. And to do that, I'm just going to do sudo vim/etc systemd/system. And this is going to be the important part here for systemd specifically. We want to do mnt media. And the reason why we want to call it specifically mnt media is because that is the folder path for our media file. Otherwise, systemd won't work. And we're just going to call it a .mount. And this is important because this is a systemd unit file. That's going to say that we want to mount something because it's a .mount file. And we want to mount it on /mnt/media. And we're going to call a unit. We're going to give it a basic description. That can really be anything. We're going to pass a requirement. And it's going to require that my network be online. And I want it to specifically mount after my network-online.target as well as my systemd resolved.service. So after both of those start, I want this to actually work. And to make sure that this starts after, it's a good thing I looked here because that's supposed to be an N. To make sure that this specifically starts after it, I also want this to want. What this does is this makes our network-online.target to now be a requirement. And of course, might as well start up after our local DNS server. Now that systemd knows when to call this unit, we're going to tell it what to do. Or we're just going to tell it that we want to mount a what? We want to mount the folder on our server. And we want to mount it on MNT media. And of course, we're going to pass a type to it because we want to make sure that's NFS options equal. And this is the important part here. You always want to tell it that's a network device. And we'll just give it the default options. Separator being a comma, of course. And then we want to install our unit file. And it'll be the multi-user.target. Okay. And we'll write and quit. And just to make sure that this actually works, we're going to unmount the media. And what we're going to do is we're going to reload system D. So system D, or system CTL. We're going to reload the daemon. And now I should be able to run sudo system CTL enable tac now mnt media.mount. And you can see that the systemd service is now mounted. And you can see that our directory is mounted even though I unmounted it earlier. And systemd will actually go through and make sure that this is almost always mounted. Now to make sure that, say our server decides it's going to reboot from an automatic update, or I just reboot the server, what that will actually cause is that for my desktop computer to actually lose this mount. To make sure that it stays mounted, we're now going to create a very similar file, but we're going to call this automount. And this being a systemd unit, we're going to pass a unit to it. We'll give it a description, NFS automount for MNT media. And we're going to tell it that this is specifically an automount. On /MNT media. And we're going to pass it a timeout. Basically what this means is that if it sits idle for a set period of time, it's going to unmount it. So I'll just pass it 30, and this is in seconds. So if I don't touch this mount for 30 seconds, basically like I don't have anything that indexes that file, it's just going to unmount it for us. Install wanted by multi-user multi-user dot target, just like that. Okay, and just like last time, we're going to reload the systemd daemon because we're writing a configuration file in our system folder. And now we're going to start. So sudo systemctl enable tac now mnt media automount. And now I've got a journal error. Okay, so maybe I don't need to start the mount. So I made a slight mistake there because I don't have to enable the dot mount. You just have to have the file existing there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go up until we find the command where we stopped it, and we're just going to disable it because we don't need that. Because you can see the automount is calling our mount. So this is actually fine. Because you can see that we're still mounted even though I disabled it. And of course, I stopped it as well. So now we've got our media directory mounted. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you probably the coolest thing about NFS as well. Because, I've gotten a couple questions in the last video where I created a game subvolume. And I'm going to show you why I created the game subvolume. And that's pretty easy. Because what I'm going to do now is we're going to well, actually, what we're going to do is just cd into etc systemd system. And now that we're in here, you can see I've got the two files. So what we're going to do is just sudo cp that, and we're going to call this games.automount. And now that I've got this created, we're going to do sudo vim mnt games.mount, and we're just going to change these two directories here. So now we've got those two created, but we're not going to start them yet. Why? Because, you know, I didn't share them yet. So let's SSH back into our server. And we're going to go into our exports. And now we're going to share our games just like this. We're going to re-export to file system. Restart the NFS server. We're going to do a control R, so sudo show mount. That'll index my bash's history to when I last showed the show mount command. Make sure that's sharing. Reload our systemd daemon again. We'll restart our automount. We'll enable our automount right now. And if we see MNT games, I now have my video games here, and I have a Steam folder as well. And you can see that is an actual Steam folder, MNT Games Steam. We can see Steam apps. Now, of course, I don't have Steam on my system, but we can install Steam real quick. So let's install Steam. Oh, 380 million packages of Steam. Okay, so we close that, and let's open up Steam. Oh, do I have the Flatpak installed? Oh, I do. Yeah, we don't need that. There we go. Let's boot Steam. That's going to take a minute. And because, you know, this is a fresh installation, it's going to sit here. It's going to update itself. Okay, there we go. Get myself signed into Steam. Yeah, I'll participate in the survey. I don't need that right now. Okay, so now in Steam, we're going to go up here. There's Steam. Steam seems to be giving some issues on Hyperland, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my system tray, right click, and we're going to access the settings, just like here. Send me a friend request, by the way. What we're going to do is we're going to go here to storage. We're going to go up here. We're going to add a drive. That's going to pull up our file picker. Go to other locations on my computer. MNT, Games, Steam, and we're going to share the root folder here for Steam. Just like that. And basically what that's going to do is just mount my entire Steam library. And on my external drive, I'm going to make that the default. So now I have my entire Steam library on my server. Yeah, this is a good game, by the way. Just thought I'd share. That's generally how I use NFS. And of course, you can wildcard and be able to share NFS across your entire network, but I don't necessarily recommend it because you don't want everything on your network to be able to see. And that's generally how I make use of NFS and be able to interact with my server and have access to all my documents at all times. Of course, the media folder, I treat a bit more universally compared to some other people. So like, so if I look at my media folder, you can see that I keep ISOs here for like all the operating systems that I mess with here. So like stuff for like my Pinebook Pro. I've got ISOs for my Raspberry Pi. I've got ISOs for x86 systems. And that's what I use in my media directory. Of course, I've also got books in here because, you know, ebooks. The reason why I use primarily NFS is because, you know, it's super stable. It's always worked for me. And of course, when, you know, you're like running a media PC on your home network, NFS is actually the fastest performing file transfer that I've seen, at least. That's how I make use of it. For example, you know, the entirety of my Steam library. I know some of you guys might have a Steam library that's larger than mine and not be able to fit on your server, but you know, my Steam library is able to fit on my server, and I hope that you guys have some interesting projects for NFS yourself. Now, in the meantime, guys, if you found this video informative, let me know. And if you'd like to see like me work through and show you guys how to set up Samba, I can set up Samba, even though personally I don't really use Samba myself because I don't have a need for it. But you know, say like if you're using a laptop or something like that, that Automounts service will actually work perfectly fine for the laptop. It might give you some system D errors when you know it's not able to connect because you know you happen to be on a completely different network, but you know, it'll work when you're home. But anyways, guys, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of my content because, you know, it does nothing for me algorithmically. But, you know, if you want to watch a video in the future, that's what that subscribe button's for. And that also lets me know that you want to see more content from me. It's really that easy of a transaction. I also sync these videos to a Peertube instance as well. I'll have that linked in the description just for the fun of it. But, of course, that written article that I showed earlier in the video, that's also going to be linked in the description down below because, you know, you might find some useful knowledge because I do cover some file permissions as well. Some very open file permissions, mind you. So treat the file permissions accordingly. But anyways, guys, I'm going to see you. Bye.